Today I would go over the most efficient way to get endgame set of gear in Guild Wars 2. I would go over instances where you actually need the highest tier of items and where you can easily go for the second best in slot. I would go over how to get the best gear with relative ease and what acquisition methods are fast and easy, compared to outdated and to be avoided methods if you value your time. For your personal convenience, this video have timestamps for major talking points. Also in the video description you can find extra information like links and even waypoint chat codes for your convenience. For all my Path of Exile subscribers, new Path of Exile videos will be on the channel once we actually get a leak that do not give me severe state of RCI. But without further ado, let's go and jump straight into Guild Wars 2. There are a total of 6 tiers of items in Guild Wars 2, 3 of them considered leveling and 3 considered endgame to various extents. We have blue color for magic items, we have green color for masterwork items, and yellow for rare items. All these lower tiers of items are in general used for leveling. Once you reach level 80, you want to be geared into orange or exotic armor or weapons. This is your MVP for gearing in Guild Wars 2. Above exotic power level we have pink or ascended tier. This tier was originally not in the game, so every bit of core game that is right now free is designed around previous exotic tier. Ascended tier is required only for one type of instances in Guild Wars 2. And in general, it is considered as a reasonable endgame grind once you decided on your class and favorite build. All ascended armor and weapons offer ability to swap type of stats with moderate price in Mystic Forge. At the same time, only limited number of ascended trinkets are stat resettable. And of course, we have last but not least, purple or legendary tier of gear. It have the same power level as previous pink or ascended tier, but in actual reality it offers huge quality of life with legendary armory. Legendary armory makes each unlocked piece of legendary gear available on every single character on your account. For example, you can craft one legendary weapon and equip it on every single character at the same time. This one legendary weapon can have different stats on every character, and also you can swap stats on legendary gear for free. The same applies for legendary armor and trinkets. But as you can understand, not every class can actually equip specific weapon, and of course 9 classes are evenly divided by 3 types of legendary armor: light, medium and heavy. Legendary crafting is one of the things that people do when they actually play hundreds and thousands of hours. Legendary gear is your ultimate reward in Guild Wars 2, but in this video I would be focusing on combination of exotic or orange with pink or ascended tiers of items. Majority of gear in these tiers are easily obtained and more than enough for vast majority of endgame encounters. Only important part is how and where you can get them. Numerous methods were introduced with years of updates and some of them just way easier, cheaper and faster. In the next chapter, let's actually go over the character slots, what you want to fill with your gear, and of course, what is the actual difference between ascended and exotic gear, where you want the best in slot all the time, and where you can totally get away with second best exotic gear. There are a total of 19 slots to fill with gear on character in Guild Wars 2. The least important slots are your free slots for underwater weapons and of course your underwater mask / helmet replacement. While underwater combat in Guild Wars 2 is the best in MMO gaming, it's generally considered to be outdated and ArenaNet rarely adds new underwater areas in new updates. It is especially true for endgame encounters. For example, there are no underwater raids. Also, major bulk of underwater combat was removed from player versus player competitive game mode as well as from world versus world. So filling up these underwater slots with endgame gear is the last priority on any list. Important slots are your 6 armor slots and 6 trinket slots, closely followed by 4 weapon slots. First, an important note. Amount of attributes that is given by 6 armor slots is less than 6 trinket slots, and aside armor ability to be upgraded with runes, trinkets are very important. And as it stands right now, it is way easier and cheaper to get ascended trinkets over exotic tier. Yes, you heard correctly. Final tier of ascended trinkets in general is more accessible than exotic tier, but more about acquisition methods in the next chapter. On armor side, it is usually way easier and cheaper to get exotic armor over ascend, and in general, armor pieces are first 6 slots that you would probably fill on any of your characters. On the weapon side in general, getting the exotic weapon is easy, but upgrading to ascending tier is usually a nice idea, since weapon slots gives quite a lot of attributes per slot. But to understand why some slots are completely fine to be filled with exotic gear while some would benefit from ascended gear, let's actually go over some numbers. Full Ascended Gear set with Berserker stats and 16 infusions over full set of Berserker exotic gear will result in total 12.5% damage increase. It is not really a lot. Also, when you account for reality where infusions are useless outside 2 endgame game times of Guild Wars 2, you only get realistic 10.2% damage increase, and that number will go down if you play with more defensive stat sets. When you account for the reality where Ascended Trinkets are easy to get, you will suddenly discover that approximately a third of the damage increase is achieved from Ascended Trinket set, and Weapon Upgrade gives roughly another third with the most of extra stats. At the same time, Armor without infusions gives only 1.8% extra damage over exotic if you already have Ascended Trinkets and weapons. But there are two big questions here. Do you actually need other qualities of Ascended Armor outside of damage? Is there any instance where it is necessary to run Ascended Armor? And of course, yes, absolutely. First, there are Fractals. These are instance 5-man endgame dungeons with 4 tiers of difficulty. While early tiers are completely fine with exotic gear, further you progress, more of agony resistance you need. Skipping agony resistance is just bad idea, and you would probably fail with inadequate agony resistance. Agony resistance is actually given by agony infusions, and agony infusions can be only slotted into Ascended and Legendary gear. So at one point you would run out of space on your Ascended trinkets and weapons, and would actually need to get Ascended Armor to fill up your agony resistance for tier 4 Fractals. Other instance where a character benefit greatly from extra defensive stats is World vs World competitive game mode. In this game mode, free service on 4 maps skirmish against hundreds of players during a week-long matchup. While it is completely fine to start and play World vs World in exotic armor, getting that extra defensive and offensive edge is really important once you learned your class basics and of course comfortable with this competitive game mode. Also, World vs World infusions actually can give you up to 16% damage mitigation from guards and lord, and that is a really viable defensive stat, pushing your Ascended Armor viability even further in World vs World exclusively. And a lot of new players would actually ask, alright, so tier 4 Fractals, dub it up, but what about raids? Raid sounds really scary and really hard. Do I need full Ascended Armor there? And the answer is no. Running raids with exotic armor, Ascended trinkets and Ascended or maybe exotic weapons with no infusions is more than enough. DPS rotations can get you so far. 10-man raids is a team effort. Your ability not to die, great knowledge of boss mechanics, ability to use voice communications and will to wipe and repeat for skill improvement are 100 times more valuable than any marginal damage increase. If your raid group fails at damage delivery, probably you have way bigger issue. Then, of course, your simple upgrade from exotic to Ascended gear, especially Ascended Armor and infusions. So, with everything said here, we are pretty much in mindset to get exotic armor, Ascended trinkets and exotic or Ascended weapons for your endgame character. So in the next chapter, let's actually dive deep into the most efficient, cheap and easy ways to fulfill these requirements. Where and how to get exotic armor. In majority of cases, as a new player, you want something simple like power damage and Berserker gear stats, and frankly, it is really cheap and easily buyable from trading posts. Daily achievement reward of 2 gold can easily fund cheap sets like Berserker. But once you want something a bit more different like my favorite Marauder stats, or maybe Viper set for Condi damage, or even Minster stats for your Davidoff Firebrand, you will have an issue.
You cannot buy any expansion related stat type from trading posts.
And crafting a lot of them is really expensive and well require leveled crafting. But you can actually get exotic armor boxes from actually playing the game. These exotic armor boxes actually have the gear with blank stats that can be permanently set to any desired stat combination in the game. So we have Living World Season 3 Episode 1, 2 and 4 for helmet armor boxes with draconic headdress, white mantle mask and bloodstone crown. These boxes usually are tied to meta achievements, but of course there are different ways to achieve them. So next we have Living World Season 3 Episode 3 for glacial gloves with gloves armor box. Then we have Living World Season 3 Episode 5 for shoulder armor box with houndskin mantle. And of course we have Living World Season 3 Episode 6 for boots armor box with Mursat brogans. And as you can see, there is like no body and leg armor in Season 3. But it can actually be found in Season 4 Episode 3 with Corsair Jerkin. I have no bloody idea how it's pronounced. Alright, then we have Season 4 Episode 5 with Corsair Leggings. All that is alongside with other armor boxes in Season 4 and even Season 5. Meta achievements are actually only one-time rewards. But what if you actually want to gear second character? Or what if you want to gear full roster of classes? Will you actually need to use expensive crafting? And the answer is no. Not only Living World gives you all the story and one-time rewards, but it also unlocks both reward tracks for Davidup and PvP, where the armor boxes are final rewards of the respectable tracks for respectable episodes. These tracks can be repeated indefinitely. Also, with Path of Fire expansion, there is the track for stat-selectable exotic desert armor box, and there is unique PvP armor box for triumphant armor. But the most valuable and easy to get armor box in my opinion is Warlord's armor box. First of all, this box contains all the armor weights and can neatly stack in your bank. It has the all selectable stats, and you can get one Warlord armor box for every week in World vs World, and you can get up to 6 Warlord armor boxes from main PvP seasons and 3 to 4 from mini seasons. Quite a lot of boxes. These boxes provide insane value and you can work on them at the same time as reward tracks, for example. Warlord boxes were added only several years ago, and to be frank, they are so great that I actually went from playing on 3 geared characters to full roster of over 10 different characters. Reward boxes from PvP are also great for both new and veteran players, since while playing PvP you will get normalized stats to the maximum. PvP is a really nice game mode and you can start playing it from day 1 in Guild Wars 2. Also, there are 2 other ways to get stat-selectable armor for helmet and shoulder slots, and there are boxes from strike missions, and they can actually be bought directly from trading post, and price really dropped down over the course of time. Also, be aware that unlocking expansions is a requirement to actually select expansion-specific stats in armor boxes or any other stat-selectable gear like trinkets, for example. Alright, we are set with the armor, but what about the trinkets? As said previously, a lot of exotic trinkets are usually more expensive and harder to get than Ascended tier. This is pretty much the relic of the past, when in 2012 on the game release there was no Ascended tier and exotic trinkets were meant as somewhat of endgame rewards. Since this is no longer the true and gear acquisition actually received the major acceleration over the years, I would only recommend using exotic trinkets only as free or very cheap placeholder until you can get actually Ascended replacement. So what are the methods? For majority of veteran players, getting Ascended rings from Fractal vendors was their first introduction to Ascended gear. But today I find that this ring vendor is somewhat outdated. If you play Fractals, I would recommend to hold on your pristine Fractal relics for mark recipes while opting for a different option. Living World Season 3 and 4 is once again very valuable tool to get Ascended trinkets. Each Living World map have unique resource nodes with unique currency for purchase of Ascended trinkets. If you do not really want to get all of Living World chapters, there are 3 that really stands out. Living World Season 3 Episode 1 Out of the Shadows. This episode provides trinkets for back item, ring and amulet slots. Unique Blood Ruby currency is hardest to get, but as a side benefit, these trinkets are stat resettable. Really powerful feature if you plan to swap builds or reuse trinkets on other character. On the second place, I would name Living World Season 3 Episode 3, Crack in the Ice. On top of the most pleasant farming road for winter bears, which are the unique currency for the map, you also can get Ascended ring, accessory, back item and even Ascended aqua breather. I would call this as your first stop on a brand new account. And the third noteworthy Living World map is the Season 4 Episode 6, War Eternal. Here you can get your ring, accessory and your amulet. On top of that, this map have really solid and interesting farmable map-wide meta event, and in general you would get a lot of map unique currency just from playing War Eternal meta event. So these are my top 3 Living World maps if you do not care about the consecutive story or simply could not really afford to get full Living World package straight out of the gate. But there are other ways to get full set of Ascended trinkets. These are a bit more time consuming but have added benefit of being stat resettable. So stat selectable and resettable rings, accessory and amulet are available in so-called mists and of course called your Mist Band, Mist Talisman and Mist Pendant. They can be purchased from vendors in Fractals of the Mist, Player vs Player Lobby, and World vs World for respective currency. This is why I recommend to actually hold on your pristine Fractal relics if you play Fractals. Mist trinkets are the same across all game modes that are located in the Mists, only different is the vendor price. And there is actually a side benefit of getting Mist band ring, since this is actually the precursor for World vs World legendary ring Conflux. Also, when you start to gear your trinkets, you can notice that you cannot really equip the same type of the rings and accessory at the same time. With a few exceptions, all ascended trinkets are unique, meaning two identically named trinkets cannot be equipped at the same time. While for accessory you want to use combination of different trinkets from different maps, for rings you have a workaround. Rings can be attuned or infused to increase amount of infusion slots. Once it's done, ring technically have a different name and can be equipped with different variation of the same ring. So in the short terms, you can equip both normal and attuned version of the same ring at the same time. So with the rings, accessories, amulet and back items you can notice one pattern. Back item is the most expensive with the least amount of stats. Kinda a psychological bummer, but well, who cares? And there is one back item that I actually consider a bit better than others, and this is actually a PvP precursor for PvP legendary back item. So you can actually earn up to 110 PvP league tickets over the course of normal PvP season, and for total of 100 you can actually get yourself Wings of Ascension. So this is the Ascended backpack with selectable stats. Really nice value in my opinion if you actually play PvP. And of course, while it is probably the most time consuming back item on my list, it is totally worth it when you actually consider crafting of your legendary back item in the future. Ever since the introduction of legendary armory, I consider legendary back items to be way better value than gathering resource nodes if you plan on playing full roster of 9 classes or maybe even more. And of course, PvP legendary back item is actually the cheapest to get. While WW1 is too expensive compared to cost of legendary armor, for example, and the Fractal legendary require a lot of very specific achievement hunting in a group and is the most expensive in crafting department. But overall, for this part, general TLDR would be just go for Living World Gathering road if you are going for your first character or maybe two, and go for potential legendary crafting of back item if you're really enjoying the game and planning to play a lot of different characters. Also, really smart gimmick with the Living World Gathering are portal tomes and scrolls sold on every single Living World map. Once you unlocked and played episode story on one of your characters, you can actually buy portal scroll for every map from a vendor. These scrolls can be used to teleport to a map on any level 80 character even without story completion. That way you can rotate full roster of your characters through map gathering every day, saving quite a bit of time. So, speaking of time investment, there are actually quite a number of ways to get ascended trinkets that are really time consuming and simply best to be avoided. So, before we start actually talking about ascended and exotic weapons, let's actually mention them in the next chapter. So, the meta achievements from Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire sometimes actually reward ascended trinkets. While it was a really nice addition back in the day, I could not see any viability compared to Living World Gathering. While it is very tempted to go for them once you finish your story, actually it takes just ungodly amount of time to finish any meta achievement. Also, these trinkets are usually have fixed stats. Other common time traps are ascended back items like Mavdray and of course your Wayfarer's Henge. First one is gives me just nightmares years later, and yeah, the second one is more reasonable, but in both cases they are heavily time gated and it would take literal weeks to get any of them. While they were really nice additions and to the ways to get ascended back items years ago, it is no longer the case. And as a final note, there is one more way to get ascended trinkets: the Laurel Merchants. And as a previous option, it is simply outdated and completely not cost effective. Yes, do not buy ascended trinkets with laurels. I still regret my choices. I spent like 120 laurels on that. Save your laurels either for WW infusions or simply convert them to tier 3, tier 4 or tier 6 material bags for legendary crafting or easy liquid gold. So, with our armor and trinkets done, let's actually go for the weapons. In the next chapter we will explore the both exotic weapons and ascended weapons that you can actually get without leveling up your crafting on your account. Buying core stat sets from trading posts is actually a thing for exotic weapons, just like for exotic armor. Also, just by playing the game, you will get a lot of exotic weapons just for completing the story. But there are several convenient ways to actually get stat selectable exotic weapons. Visions of the Past, Steel and Fire achievements are actually your go-to for several types of exotic weapons. For example, Rail and Steel Catcher Footstep achievement gives you stat selectable greatsword, and if you have leveled crafting, you can actually get 3 extra greatswords. Also, you can simply bypass the achievement just by buying the stat selectable Iron Legion weapons from trading post. This is kinda an option as well. And of course, the achievements itself are tied to strike mission and have a relatively short and fast scavenge hunt. Strike missions, of course, is the type of Guild Wars 2 endgame content that is the new player friendly and in a lot of cases easier than raids or fractals. Majority of strike missions require semi-organized 10-man group, and this game mode was introduced with Season 5 Living World. And Steel and Fire strike mission is one of the easiest. And for the other stat selectable weapon boxes that are relatively easy to get, we have the Obsidian weapon boxes from PvP and World vs World vendors. I would recommend to avoid World vs World vendors since it's not really cost effective. Buy an exotic armor from World vs World vendor as well, just go for the PvP. PvP simply have better value, while World vs World currencies are better hold on to craft legendary armor or simply liquidate memories of battle into the gold. So the next on my scale of accessibility are actually the ascended weapons. Yes, finally we are going for the full-on ascended weapons. And first on my list, the actual questline from side stories Knight of the Thorn. This achievement questline is actually have really cool side story that expand their original campaign and Heart of Thorns expansion. And as a reward you can get one of stat selectable ascended weapons. They are of course the shield, scepter, sword, greatsword and the dagger. Nice feature that you can actually reset ascended stats of these weapons for 1000 of unbound magic, and this is incredibly cheap. Only the downside that you actually require to actually craft items for the second, third one and fourth one, etc, and this required level 500 disciplines. But actually getting first one is free, so yes. But what about non-crafting methods? Are there any other methods to get your ascended weapons? And there are. While I totally recommend to skip meta achievements for ascended trinkets unless you truly enjoy the achievement hunts, for the weapons there are really nice and achievable elite specialization weapon collections. So the Heart of Thorn ones are kinda steadily grew in price with the price increase of Mystic coins since HOT release, and I would generally not recommend them unless you totally set on avoiding leveling up your crafting. On the other side, with the Path of Fire, there are weapon collections that are really accessible. After that we have all the ascended weapons that you can actually get from the Mist's vendors. That include Fractals of the Mist, Player vs Player and World vs World. On top of respective currency, you actually need specific marks. These Grandmaster marks either can be crafted or specific marks are selectable from Grandmaster mark boxes. You can get up to 3 Grandmaster mark boxes with each main PvP season, and you can actually accumulate 1 Grandmaster mark box slowly over the course of 4 weeks while playing World vs World. So in theory you can totally avoid crafting while playing PvP and World vs World and still get the ascended weapons on top of all other rewards. And after that point we pretty much have only ascended weapon crafting as only reasonable and cost-effective option. Also, remember that ascended weapons and armor chests actually drop in every single game mode, with World vs World being the most rewarding. Probably 90% of my ascended boxes drop there. Or maybe probably I just played too much World vs World, who knows. Whatever your approach to getting the endgame gear, remember that actually playing and enjoying the game is the actual goal. Different people have different favorite things, and for some the most cost-effective ways are the actual chores, while for the others more expensive and time-consuming are the genuine fun. And of course, thank you so much for watching this video. And if you find videos like that helpful, please give it a like to actually help even more new players to find this video in YouTube algorithm. And until the next time, have a pleasant day. Foxy Shanks out.